And good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Chaffey College PACT Act Explained webinar on behalf of the California Department of Veteran Affairs and our partner, Chaffey College. We want to thank you all for joining us this morning. We have a wonderful presentation. We're going to talk about the PACT Act this morning and give you some insight on what it is and how it can help you with your disability claim. My name is Kirk Eller. I am a training coordinator with the California Department of Veteran Affairs in the CalTAP unit. And I will be going over, first and foremost, a little bit of the CalVet overview and the CalTAP overview. And first, I want to start off with a little housekeeping. We have a chat function. If you click the toolbar below, and you'll see a little chat icon at the bottom of your toolbar. If you open that up and you would like to put questions in there, my colleague Derek Rose will be putting some resource materials and the resource book, as well as a map for the links and some other information in this chat function. If you do have a question, we would like to ask you if you could hold off until after we put our resources in during the presentation of our guest speaker, David West. Then we will address those questions on the back end of his presentation. So kind of like give him an opportunity to provide that information in his presentation. Your question might get answered during this presentation, so you might not even have to put anything in there. So to mitigate that, we would like you to just keep your microphones and your cameras off for bandwidth purposes. And then with that being said, we'll go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Kirk Eller, and I am a training coordinator here in the California Department of Veteran Affairs. We go all over, and we've done these webinars very much since the pandemic, these little one-hour opportunities to provide information on a variety of topics. So today we have, we're going to go over the CalTAP overview real briefly, what your California benefits are, so that we can get to the meat portion of this presentation of the PACT Act. My colleague Derek Rose will be filling in for Merlene Steinbeck, who is our link coordinator. She's currently on assignment at another event, and she's unable to attend. So Derek will be covering her portion of what her roles and responsibilities are. And then following that brief overview, David West, who is the Nevada County Veteran Service Officer, he will be providing the keynote speaker today for the PACT Act. So, and then we will follow up that again, like I mentioned, with the Q&A portion. So if you do have questions throughout this, if you could wait until after he's done with his presentation to put them in the chat, we will address them in an open forum and answer them accordingly. So you may have your question answered during his presentation. So that's why we're kind of saying maybe hold off until he's done presenting. Thank you, and we'll get started. So let's talk real quick about the CalTAP and what it is and what resources it provides for you, okay? CalTAP was actually designed and it was implemented in 2017 to connect and inform veterans of all areas what their federal and earned state benefits are, and then provide continued support as those needs change over time. How we do it is with our 5 pathways. If you go to our homepage, you'll see those pathways which are listed here: the core curriculum, education, employment, and then entrepreneurship. Our 5th pathway is for service providers, those who would like to work with veterans, and provides kind of a training module for them to learn about how to do that. So this is our veteran resource book. I did mention that my colleague Derek Rose is going to be running the back end in the chat, and we'll be posting this in the chat. You will have access to this to download. I highly encourage you to download a digital copy of this, maybe to your mobile device, and have it with you everywhere you go. You can also use this QR code to take you to that resource book as well. This is what our homepage looks like, the calvet.ca.gov. Here you can access all the information available from CalVet, various topics, divisions, and resources. And to get to the CalTAP portal, you would highlight that little icon there on the laptop and click that, and it'll take you to the CalTAP portal. This is what the CalTAP portal is, and you can see the 5 pathways I mentioned before. And we're going to focus real briefly on the core curriculum pathway, which is going to cover just your basic California specific benefits. This is what the core curriculum has. Various modules that are self-paced that you can learn about healthcare, protecting your benefits, claims and compensation, things like that. And you can go through this at your own leisure and pace whatever benefits that you're actually looking for. Let's focus on Module 5 real quick, what your California benefits are. And everybody wants to know, what are they? Specifically, the most comprehensive one and popular one is obviously the college tuition fee waiver for dependents. And this waiver is allowed for veterans who have a service-connected disability rating from 0 to 100%. Their dependents would be able to have their tuition waived at any state-funded school. And we can go over these again if you have specific questions at the end, but I'm going to go through these rather quickly, like I mentioned before. So the tuition fee waiver is obviously one of the most popular. Also, the veteran designation on your driver's license. It's a really good resource to have to show that you're a veteran on one document. You don't have to carry multiple around. And then also the motor vehicle registration fee waiver. This requires a 100% service-connected disability rating from the VA with permanent total and mobility issues, so you can have your fees waived on one of your motor vehicles. Okay, let's see where. Other benefits are the reduced fishing and hunting license through the wildlife website. And that is a 50% service-connected disability rating from the VA to be eligible for that. And also for the no-cost state park pass or the distinguished veteran pass. You can visit their websites and you can apply for those benefits directly on their website online. There's also a disabled veteran property tax exemption and business exemptions. For those, you have to have 100% service-connected, permanent and total from the VA. And then I would recommend that you contact your local entities where you reside for your taxes to see what the process is for the application, and the same with the business license. Other CalVet divisions, veteran services where we work here in CalTAP. And then also our home loans division is also very popular. You can go online and look through the home loans and apply directly online for home loans. This is a great program. And you can also combine the CalVet loan with your VA loan, so you can get the best of your guarantee from the VA with no money down, and then also CalVet as the lender. Our women veterans division provides advocacy and outreach for women veterans specifically. And then also they have a statewide roster you can sign up for to receive upcoming information and benefits. And then they also host an annual leadership summit as well. Same with the minority and underrepresented veterans. They have assistance and advocacy for minority and underrepresented veterans. They also provide a statewide roster you can sign up for. And currently right now, they're assisting with unnaturalized veterans to assist with that naturalization process to become citizens, and assisting them with that financial aspect of it. We have 8 CalVet homes throughout the state of California for long-term care. They provide excellent care for our aging veterans from skilled nursing as well as memory care units, but they also have a really, really nice, robust, independent living for our veterans so that they can get out and do some social activities and travel and have some activities there. We also have 3 cemeteries attached to our CalVet, and one is in Seaside. One's up in Igo, up in Redding. Our third one is attached to the Yountville Veteran Home in Yountville. We currently do have one in being built in Southern California in the Lake Forest area, but that one's under construction right now. So I mentioned before that CalTAP wants to stay connected with you and provide those resources to you as your needs change over time. And how we want to do that is with this continued support. We have our social media platforms with those QR codes that are shown there, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and the CalVet link there. We also would like you to provide a non-DoD email to CalTAP, our email address there. And then you can go on our homepage and register for My CalVet to receive our newsletter and upcoming information and stay connected with us that way. We also ask you to attend webinars like this, and then also fill out the survey. We do take your survey feedback seriously so that we can continually improve and provide feedback and updates on information that is needed that you're interested in. So please take that time to fill the survey out as well. This is where you would go to register for My CalVet on our homepage. Just click register, provide some information. and then they will send you a confirmation email. One of the nice things I'd like to mention with this is you can actually filter out the information that you're interested in looking for, what types of benefits, so you can receive updates and stay in the know on current activities, especially with like current legislation on veteran benefits that's going through Senate bills and things of that nature. If you do register for My CalVet, you'll be eligible to receive our CalVet's monthly newsletter from Veteran Services. Here you'll see a snapshot of that monthly newsletter. You can get a monthly message from our Deputy Secretary, Mr. Keith Boylan, and he will address his message and provide information for the topic of the month. And then for the topic of the month, we have follow-on webinars that you can actually register right there, and it'll take you to the link for our Eventbrite page, as well as other valuable information in the news and this moments that matter for this continuum of care. Also, the VA website, this is our mothership where you would find all your benefits. You can actually sign in and create your My VA account, and there you can actually manage your benefits through that portal. This is my contact information. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. And then again, at follow-on, we are going to be doing an open forum Q&A. We will address all the questions that are in the chat feature. So if you do have a question, if you could please, again, refrain to the end of David West's message so that he may be given the opportunity to answer your question before you ask it. So with that being said, I'm going to turn over to my colleague, Derek, who's going to provide Merlene Steinbeck's information for the link. Thank you, Derek.
Thank you, Kirk. As Kirk said, my name is Derek Rose, and I serve as a training coordinator as well for the CalTAP team. But today I'm going to be stepping in and filling in for our colleague Merlene, who does great work out of the Inland Empire link region. And I'm going to just give you a rundown of exactly who our links are, what they do, and how you can connect and find local support wherever you may be residing in California. So let's go ahead to the next slide. So this slide, it represents our link regions, and you can see how each one of those 8 regions are broken up. Every region has, different geographical area, different size, and that is all basically based off of our veteran population. So some areas are larger than others. For example, our Northern California region, which looks like almost half the state right there, it's a very vast region compared to, let's say, our region down in Orange County, which by geography is a lot smaller, but has a higher concentration of veterans in the veteran community. So basically, the point of this is to show that in each region that you reside, there is a CalVet link in your region that's designed there to serve you. And they can get you assistance on any of the benefits that we're covering today, whether it's your federal benefits, whether it's your state benefits that Kirk already covered, or connecting to local agencies and nonprofit organizations to help serve you. So the link is basically the boots on the ground, right? And out there representing CalVet in the community. So their role is to basically establish those connections, to work in partnership with our county veteran service offices, to basically know who the points of contact are for VA facilities, local nonprofit groups and agencies, and other state agencies as well, like Employment Development Department, basically to really have a pulse on what the veteran needs are in that community. So they're really great. Right now they're all spread a little thin, especially with our disaster relief centers that have opened up, with all of the flooding that's happened in Northern California. So if you'd like to just take maybe a snapshot of this map, that's going to show you who that link is in your region and in your county. So just wanted to share that with you and let you know that somebody from CalVet is always there to serve you wherever you may be. Next slide. So a little specifically about what they do, I kind of just did a brief run through, but they provide that outreach to the service members, veterans, and their families. Like I said, really have an understanding of what the local needs are in their community. They do establish that referral network. So if a veteran comes to them, say, hey, I'm in need of affordable housing, they can connect you with that city or that county's affordable housing provider, or a veteran service provider in that region, and make that direct handoff and that direct referral. Also assisting with the local emergencies. Right now, it's a lot of disaster relief centers for our flooding. A few years ago, it was fires. So they help support whether that's a FEMA relief center or a county relief center. They're there basically to help whatever those veterans' needs are, whether it's helping them locate their service records, their DD-214s, or placing those orders for a new copy, or helping with prescription refills from their VA pharmacy and things of that nature. So they also, are really busy right now with that, but they are a great resource for when those emergencies do happen. And like I just said, leadership and advocacy to local communities. Their roles are to really understand the needs and kind of gauge the pulse of the veteran community. So they're all really plugged in to all their county VSOs, all of the nonprofits as well in that community. So really great resources wherever you may be. Next slide. Connecting to those benefits that we mentioned, Kirk kind of covered all of the state benefits that they can, of course, help you apply for, especially at your county veteran service office. But they also work hand in hand with other state agencies like EDD and the veteran job representatives for EDD, America's Job Center. Like I said, they have individual partnerships and relationships with each county in their region for all of the VSOs as well. And they're connected to all of the local VA health centers and clinics. So if you need a referral for VA healthcare or you need a referral for a VA vet center, they're there to make that referral and that connection. So do encourage you to take note of who your link is. Just want to show there's 8 representatives there to serve you. So wherever you may be tuning in from today, there's somebody there to work with you directly. So I'm filling in specifically for Merlene. So if you're in the Inland Empire region, feel free to take her contact information. It should be on the next slide. And that is Merlene Steinbeck. She does a lot of great work in the Inland Empire, but of course, any of our links are there to serve you and can answer your questions. And you can always reach out to us at CalVet to connect you to your link in your region. So just wanted to share that with you all. And now I will turn it back over to Kirk.
Thank you, Derek. I appreciate you filling in for Merlene. And we'll post the map in the chat as well. I'll drop that so you can download that map of the link so you can have access to that. And now I'm going to turn it over to our great guest speaker here for Nevada County, and it's David West. He's the service officer up there, and he does some really great work and advocacy for veterans up there in that region. And he's here to provide this information about the PACT Act, kind of go over what it is, and tell you how it can help you if you're applying for anything, presumptive conditions that you may have. So David, thank you for joining us. We appreciate your time taking to present this information, and take it away. Just let me know when you need me to advance the slides.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Kirk, for your kind words. And as always, I appreciate the invite to present some information that's available to our veterans. There you go. There's Nevada County. There's me. Next slide, please. All right, today we're going to be talking about the PACT Act, or what is honestly known as the Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson Honoring Our Promise to Address Comprehensive Toxics Act of 2022. Also known as Public Law Number 117-168. This is what's known as the PACT Act and what President Biden signed into law on August 10th of 2022. This has been known as the most impactful piece of legislation that has impacted veterans in decades. It's mostly known for impacting our Vietnam and our current Gulf War veterans. However, it positively impacts every veteran who ever served. All right, a couple of things we're going to talk about is expansion of VA healthcare benefits, expanded Agent Orange benefits, and what they've added to the presumptive list. They established the presumptive conditions due to burn pit exposure, what locations you need to be in for those. And it also provided the Secretary the ability to add or remove conditions from the presumptive list. All right, and then last and most impactful piece of this legislation is for the first time ever it allowed veterans who lived or worked at Camp Lejeune to sue the federal government. So that's veterans or any person. Next slide, please. Healthcare benefits. Okay, what this did, it expanded benefits and eligibility criteria for veterans with toxic exposure and veterans of the Vietnam, Gulf War, and post 9/11 eras. All right. Also, what it did, every transitioning service member now, previously there's been a couple of evolutions of this benefit. Previously, when veterans got out of the military, they're entitled to 1 year of free healthcare service, right? Then they expanded that to 5 years. Well, now any veteran who's getting out of the military has 10 free years of VA healthcare after their military service, regardless of they're receiving benefits or not. This is really important. There was a time in my life when I was building houses, I worked 40 hours a week. I made great money. However, there was no medical insurance available to me from my provider, for the person that I worked for, right? Had I had this benefit back for me in the day, I probably would have been able to get taken care of rather than with the options that were available to me at the time. Okay. Requires all veterans in the VA medical system to participate in a toxic exposure exam, right? Regardless of the area that they served. This is awesome. Every veteran who's in the VA healthcare system is going to be required to take one of these exams so they can track the different populations, different areas of veterans, and see what conditions are coming so that they can expand benefits later down the road. And last, it requires the VA and the DoD to establish an exposure tracking record system to track any exposure a veteran may have had during service. This is really beneficial for those veterans who served in between the Vietnam and the Gulf War that started August 2nd, 1990, and still has not been decided. Those veterans in between there is usually be very hard to get them service connected. Now, we can relate any of their conditions back to their chemical exposure, and the VA cannot easily dismiss those claims. And internally, they're tracking all this information through the VA and the DoD that they can be used later. Next slide, please. What does it mean to have a presumptive condition for toxic exposure? Okay, there's 5 ways for a veteran to get service connected. There's direct. That means a veteran's running, the Marine's running, he sprains his knee while he's in service and he still has a bad knee. The VA is going to compensate him for a bad knee. You have aggravated, meaning they have a bad knee, they've been walking around with a limp for 10 years, and eventually they have, no, that's secondary. I'm describing a secondary claim, meaning they're walking around on their bad right knee, and they're limping, and eventually their left knee goes bad. Their left knee has been injured because of their right knee. That is called a secondary claim. Now, an aggravated claim is when they blow out their knee junior year of high school playing football, they get into the military service, and then they continue to have problems with their knee. That is called aggravated. All right. And then there's an 1151 claim, meaning veterans who get hurt at the VA, as VA medical malpractice. You can file that. And the last is presumptive, meaning a veteran needs to serve in a certain area, such as Vietnam or the Gulf, and get diagnosed with one of these conditions that is on this presumptive list, and the VA is going to concede that happened while you're in service. Okay, that's what that means. The VA consider a condition presumptive when it's established by law or regulation. So when the PACT Act was passed, they added some conditions. They established a presumptive list for all Gulf War areas, right? And if you have a presumptive condition, you need not to prove that the service caused the condition. You only need to be there. You need to be there. You got the condition. The VA is going to compensate you for that. Next slide, please. All right. So for our Vietnam era veterans, these 2 changes are very significant. Okay. For our Thailand veterans, previously, we would have had to have placed them on the perimeters of the base, being a dog handler or security forces, because when they were spraying the Agent Orange outside the perimeter of these bases, the wind did not blow it past those chain link fence. It just stayed on the perimeter, right? Well, this bill fixes that. Now, any person that served on a U.S. or Royal Thai military base throughout the duration of the Vietnam War, they're now going to be entitled to presumptive service connection, just like their brothers and sisters that served in Vietnam. This is also extended to certain people that served in Laos for a period of 4 years, and a very small window in April for people that served in Cambodia. All right. Now, this is where it gets really significant. This is the biggest change for me, is that any military member that served on Guam from the start of the Vietnam War all the way up until July 31st of 1980, they're now going to be established to presumptive conditions for Agent Orange exposure because they stored it there. And also the last place is the Johnson Atoll, or on a ship that was called at the Johnson Atoll from those dates. And that is because that is where the military burned this stuff and set it on fire. They brought it all there, and that's where it got put to rest. All right. They added these 2 new conditions, the most significant ones being hypertension. If a veteran served in Thailand, Vietnam, Guam, Johnson Atoll, Laos are in those conditions and they have hypertension, the VA is now going to compensate them for that. This really impacts our surviving spouses. Okay, hypertension can cause other conditions such as heart attacks, strokes. And if we can prove that hypertension was the cause of those diseases, then, or those events that happened to the veteran, that spouse is now entitled to DIC benefits, which is roughly $1,500 a month. It's life-changing for them. And they added monoclonal gammopathy of undetermined significance, otherwise known as MGUS. That's a blood disorder that eventually turns into cancer. Next slide, please. All right, these are our veterans who served during the Gulf War and post 9/11 veteran eras. If anybody that served on any of these locations, they are now going to be entitled to presumptive conditions. We're going to go through that list in a second. This is really significant. Previously, a lot of veterans got denied for undiagnosed Gulf War illness or had a hard time pointing to the conditions they had were because of what they experienced while they were serving in one of these locations during our first war. They lit the oil wells on fire. There's pictures of camels and horses running through with oil all over them, right? It's very bad condition. A lot of veterans are having healthcare problems because of that. And these are the bases that from August 2nd to 1990, okay? Next slide, please. So then we had a big break in periods, right? We had our first Gulf War, and then on September 11th, we got attacked by the bad guys. So, and then we immediately jumped into our second conflict on the war on terror. And these are these locations that got added. So any veterans that served during at these locations after this time period is going to be entitled to benefits as well. What are those conditions? Next slide. So this slide goes over the list of cancers that are presumptive. And as you're going to see, it's really not listed to a certain type of cancer, right? So you got brain cancer and glioblastoma. My father died of glioblastoma. That is a form of brain cancer, right? So this covers the brain cancers, covers everything else that doesn't involve with glioblastoma. Head cancer of any type, kidney cancer, lymphoma of any type, melanoma, neck cancer, pancreatic cancer, reproductive cancer of any type, respiratory cancers of any type. If you get a cancer, we're going to be blaming it due to your exposure to the burn pits during your service. If you get any bad condition, we're going to be blaming it through your service. However, these are the ones that are considered presumptive. Okay. Glioblastoma does not have a high success rate of beating it. So there might be a lot of surviving spouses out there who may be entitled to benefits that aren't tapping into those. Next slide, please. And now these are the illnesses that are associated with breathing in those toxic fumes. Asthma that was diagnosed after service, chronic bronchitis, COPD, rhinitis, sinusitis, constructive bronchiolitis, emphysema, interstitial lung disease, pleuritis. Okay, when you're running around these burn pits, it did bad stuff to your lungs, and it did lots of bad stuff to your breathing mechanism, right? So these conditions are, if you have one of these, especially later in life, for the COPD, that could be beneficial and life-changing. Next slide, please. It also expanded exposure to radiation. There is a certain group of our veterans that during the after the First World War in Las Vegas, they got to watch, there was big parties watching these nuclear blasts where they were taken off of, right? And the cleanup of the Iwataka Atoll, that's radiation. That's where they would do a lot of testing, clean up of the Air Force B-52 bomber carrying nuclear weapons during that time period. And there was also a fire on board an Air Force B-52 bomber All right, those 3 locations and those periods are now included for radiation exposure. Next slide, please. All right. So what this is a Toxic Exposure Presumptive Team Act. This is what gives the VA the authority to add and take stuff off of the claims. All right. VA gives general authority to create new toxic presumptive exposures and presumptive conditions. Previously, the Secretary of the VA wasn't allowed to add or remove things off the presumptive list based on the medical evidence that was available, and it was a very lengthy process. As medical information and studies have gotten better, it has allowed for a decision to be made quicker, so they changed the processes that allowed that to happen, okay? It also requires the VA to annually publish a report on which potential presumptive conditions are currently being studied. This is for our veterans that have IBS, sleep apnea. A lot of veterans from the current war are suffering from those conditions. They might be studying those and deciding they can add those to the presumptive list as well. It authorizes the VA to work with the National Academies of Science and Engineering and Medicine to study conditions. That's a new process. And internally, this is internally to the VA. This is part of the process that has made the claims development and the claims process slow down. Has really required a backlog, which has really increased the backlog. The term individual longitude exposure record includes service records and any database maintained by the Department of Defense and shared with the VA to serve as a central portal for exposure-related data. What this means is they're going to be building every veteran that files a claim. So like I said, if you served in the 80s, right, and you played with diesel fuel, and you now have a condition that we can relate to your diesel fuel, the VA is no longer going to be able to quickly dismiss that, and they're going to have to develop that. They're going to have to find out what your MOS is, where you were at, what fuels you used, and start to build something to show that, yes, you were indeed exposed to a chemical. All right, the VA PACT requires the VA to provide a CMP exam to a veteran when there is evidence of a disability and evidence of participation in toxic exposure risk activity. What that means is you're on a boat, you have a disability that we have identified could be related to your exposure. The VA places you in that place. They can no longer dismiss it. Now they're going to have to ask the VA doctor, is it possible that this exposure event caused this condition? All right. They're not allowed. The only times that they're not allowed to is if the Secretary determines there is no indication of association between the disability and the toxic exposure or risk activity. Right. The Secretary of the VA says there's no way that your hearing loss is because of your exposure to Agent Orange, right? Then they're not going to order that exam. It has to be relatable. And the intent was to make it this. So the intent was easier to make it easier for veterans to obtain exams under this theory. This correlates back to our Vietnam veterans who served in Thailand, right? Previously, we do a bunch of development and try to find different exposures to relate their exposure to Agent Orange on another different condition. Let's say prostate cancer, JP5 has benzene in it, right? So we would develop for exposure to benzene related to their job, trying to get them service connected, and the VA would be at times be able to easily dismiss that claim, but we'd have to go to appeal. What this means is they can no longer dismiss those claims. They have to do development, they have to look at it, and they have to take it into account. And the VA has to ask a doctor if it's plausible that one condition, that your exposure caused that condition. Next slide, please. All right, this is the Camp Lejeune Justice Act. This is not my favorite part of the act. It's caused a lot of predatory practices. However, it is good for some of those people that didn't serve or served on bases or have not had a good luck getting compensated for their diseases that they believe as a result of Camp Lejeune. For those of you that don't know, I'm a Marine, my beloved Marine Corps. They poisoned everybody for about 40 years at Camp Lejeune by providing bad drinking water. There is a list of conditions on there. There's about 8 that are presumptive. What this has allowed veterans and civilians who served on this base is an opportunity to sue the federal government for conditions that they believe were a result of that exposure. There's a lot of predatory practices. There's a lot of attorneys out there trying to get veterans to sign up for this. It might be worth it for some veterans. As a VSO, what I can tell you is if you are successful getting money from a class action lawsuit, of course, you're gonna have to pay back the lawyers for the money that they've gotten. And if you do decide to file a claim with the VA, you're gonna have to pay back the money that you're gonna have to pay back the money that you're awarded through this lawsuit if you are successfully compensated by the VA. So, that's the money that the attorney got, that's the money that you got, and then you can start getting benefits from the VA. If you would like to talk to an attorney about that, I would encourage you to contact the Bergman and Moore. And there's their information on there, and they will be able to help you. If you want to actually file a claim, go to your county veteran services officer. Next slide, please. Which takes us into how do I find my CVSO if I want to file a claim? All right, we got our blue book that Kirk was showing you earlier that you can download to your phone and get all the information on there. It lists all the VSOs and then how to contact them. That's one approach. Next slide. You can go to the CalVet website, calvet.ca.gov. On top, it says find a service provider. You click up there and it's going to take you to this slide where it says search provider by location. You put in your zip code, maximum distance, then it'll take you. The next slide will take you there. And then there's another phone number you can contact. Okay. 884-1844-SERVET. That's an 800 number that'll put you in contact with your nearest VSO. Next slide. All right, with that, we got questions and we can look at each other and turn on our cameras if you like. Here's some questions. Your contact, if you have some CalTAP training out, reach out to Kirk. There's everybody else's information. There's my information. The PACT Act is full of a lot of information. There's a lot of benefits that are available to veterans. It's very difficult to go over everything in a little half-hour webinar. What I encourage you to do is always monitor your health, right? If you served over there and you get something, you're going to go to your VSO and we're going to try and relate it back to your service over there. I encourage you to please participate in your VA healthcare so they can collect data. Right? It's helpful for your brothers and sisters that also served over there to get as much data as possible to show what you guys are experiencing as you age from your exposure.
Thanks, David. Great job. Hey, we're going to go over the Q&A portion now, the questions. My colleague Derek's been putting some information in the chat. I just posted the PDF of these slides in the chat as well. So if you guys want to download those just for future use, you can have access to them for review. So I'm going to let Derek, I think, already put his name in there. So if you want to reach out to Derek in the chat, just send it to the CalTAP questions and we'll see it in the chat feature and we'll address your questions there. So, and we do appreciate you guys kind of holding off until David got done. So now we can kind of like free up the chat without having the resources in there and having to go back and forth. So thank you very much for that. So with that, I'll open it up to Derek so we can open up the questions.
I don't see any questions that have come in to me directly in the questions tab. The attendees are allowed to message the host directly. So unless either Kirk or David, you got a message directly on your end, I'm not seeing anything on mine. But I do have a question though, myself, regarding the information covered. As far as the locations, and does the VA recognize specifically for Navy personnel who may not have been specifically stationed there long-term on orders, but have gone through maybe 2 or 3 times on like a port call or a deployment, and have now been diagnosed with those issues? Does that still make for a service connection eligibility, or is it kind of like a long-term period of time, for that deployment or location in that area, if that makes sense?
That is a good question, Derek.
because I've had that question a few times. Someone said, I was there, but I was, went through Bahrain a few times throughout my 20-year career on deployments, so or anywhere else, in the Gulf area. So I was just wanted to throw that out there, just maybe for future reference, but that's just something I've heard previously in relation to the PACT Act. So I was just curious.
So I can tell you, unlike Agent Orange, where we had to establish boots on the ground for them to get service connected, right? This goes all the way up into space, right? So if they flew over it, if they went over it, I don't have a good answer on if they're in the Navy or they're on a boat off to the side, right? I do know we have to put them in, so I am going to study up on that and get back to you, Derek. Good question. David Anderson also asks, is the Marine training facility at Little Creek part of Camp Lejeune? I'm investigating that real quick. All right, let me get to it, David.
I do have another question that came to me directly. It says, is it advisable to submit a PACT Act claim if you are currently 100% permanent in total, meaning probably no adjustment to the benefit itself, unless that pushes you over a certain threshold or something along those lines?
So this is what I tell my veterans to get up to 100%. If you're married, right? So if it's like a Vietnam veteran who gets hypertension, who's 100% service connected for, let's say, PTSD, right? Nobody's really going to die from PTSD unless they become a statistic, right? We'll talk about that's a different conversation for a different day. However, if they recently got diagnosed with hypertension, it's not going to have any impact on them, but it's going to make it easier for the spouse to get service connection on later on if we can prove that the hypertension is on their code sheet and they're getting compensated for it, right? Those are the instances where it could be beneficial to have it added to the claim, right? I mean, nobody's going to die from, I hope not, asthma or rhinitis or sinus. Like that's a bad asthma attack nowadays, but we'd want to evaluate if it's something that is going to potentially that they could pass from and how it would benefit their spouses long term. I'm not a big fan of getting if it's not going to impact your overall rating, I don't feel like we should be submitting all those claims at this time just because of how overwhelmed the VA is with their backlog, right? You're just taking up more space in the system. However, if it is something that we think it could benefit your family long term, then of course we are going to file that claim.
Yeah, I think that's a great point for sure. Yeah,
David, I got two questions that came directly to me. One was, how do we coordinate with advocates like the DAV, et cetera, for claims? I know on our end, we always encourage you guys to use our county veteran services, but there are some good nonprofits out there. So I'll let you kind of entail on that, David.
So like Kirk, yes, there are other organizations out there like DAV, American Legion, VFW. They can assist you with filing a claim. I'm a big advocate for county veteran services officers. California County Veteran Services Officers has set the standard for benefit for advocacy across the nation. The training that we get, the pride we take in our jobs. I'm not saying those other organizations don't have the same sense of pride or what we have, but the reason why sometimes your county veteran services office is so hard to get in touch of is because we're good at our job. Right? We're good at our job. People want to come see us. We try to police our own. I'm also chair of the mentor committee, so I go up and down California educating my peers, making sure that they're running good offices and helping any way we can. We really lean on each other. I'm not aware of any other programs like that those other organizations have. So yeah, I would encourage you, if you would want to be serviced by one of those organizations, to reach out to them. You can find them on the Google, as the old people say, right? Anything's on the Google, but I would also just encourage you to come see your county veteran services officer.
If they do use one of those nonprofit agencies like the DAV or AMVETS or Veteran VFW, just make sure that the representative that's there that's going to help you with your claim is an accredited representative. Make sure they're accredited with the VA. so that they can actually submit your claim for you on your behalf. But that's why we want you to use those county offices.
So I don't,
They're
so
accredited.
they have different structures, right? So everybody in my office is accredited. We have it was called the PIV card, which gives us access to the VA system so we can track your claim. A lot of these organizations, you know, at the local level is just a guy or a girl who's got a quick little class. They got that they said, and they file a claim and they submit it up. And then somebody else reviews it and then they submit it. Then you're asking questions. We got access. We can look and help and do things. And we're accredited. We hold ourselves to a high standard. So yeah, thank you, Kurt.
Yep. Okay. The last question I got is this person's a dependent receiving DIC benefits, deceased spouse from Camp Lejeune exposure. And she's asking for a recommendation for using Bergman and Moore as a legal term. And, you know, I know they come highly recommended. We've done several webinars with Bergman and Moore. And I know that they have they do a pro bono work specifically for veterans and their family members for their claims. So, I mean, we can suggest that, yeah, you could reach out to them. They're a great asset for that kind of work. So without trying to advocate specifically for any one organization on behalf of our department, I know that they do pro bono work for that representation.
So I do have a few questions coming in on the question side. If you just want to run through those real quick. So one was from Raheem, says retiring on September 1, 2023. Congratulations. When can I take advantage of CalVet services? So I would say now. You can apply for our home loans program. You can basically get started with all the benefits that CalVet has to offer. I think you can even apply for veterans preference already in terms of employment through the state as well. So basically everything we offer is, available for active duty as well. I would also say, and if it comes to determining a service connection, any type of VA rating, you can still apply for that while you're on active duty. I believe it's up to 90 days. I'm sure David can correct me on that as well. So if you're in the process of a claim, that will also have a huge factor on what you can apply for as well. But he follows that up with, and as a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star recipient, is there any other CalVet service designated for me? So I would assume that would come with a rating as well. Of course, we have our fee waiver program for, dependents of service-connected veterans. Depending on your rating, you may be eligible for a funding fee waiver on a VA home loan and a CalVet home loan as well. So I think, that's pretty soon in September. So you're going to be, right there as far as being able to apply for all these. So David, maybe did you want to follow that up with anything?
Yeah, you can file your claim within 180 days of discharge, right? So we want to get your, if you fall into that window, that's important. And I would encourage you to reach out to your, if you're planning on going to school, right? There's two options for you. One is your GI Bill that you have. However, we encourage people to tap into their VR&E, their Veterans Readiness and Employment Benefits first. If you tap into that first, you can save your GI Bill benefits for later to get your master's and those types of educations. Those are the two things that I always recommend. If you're going to go to community college or locally, trying to use VR&E first to save your better benefit later, because once you tap into your GI Bill benefit, you have to use that. You have to exhaust it before you can use your Veterans Readiness and Employment.
And then another claim says, will claims previously rated at a 0% that are not presumptive conditions in the PACT Act get reevaluated?
So that happens a lot. Veterans get service connected at 0%. The good one is hearing loss, right? You have enough for hearing loss, you got hearing loss, but not enough to get paid for. No, that doesn't include anything in the PACT Act. What you need to do is you need to show that your condition has gotten worse. And a lot of times that's just as simple as filing for a claim for increase. You have to wait at least a year before doing that. That's how we coach our veterans. You have to wait a year. But if your knee's gotten worse, you can file a claim for increase. You're not stuck with that rating for life, right? And like I said, one thing affects another.
Hey, David, with that being said, how does that apply to those? This is kind of along that line. How do those that have that were applying for the Gulf War, specifically for those Gulf War illness benefits that were denied because the VA was rejecting those claims, saying, oh, they're not service connected, they're not service connected. And, you know, they have upper respiratory, they have sinusitis, they have all these other conditions that are, you know, in line with burn pits, et cetera. Now, do those original claims that they filed at their original date and they get reevaluated now, do they go back to those claims that were denied originally?
No, they do not. This is the Congress learned from our Vietnam era veterans.
Yeah.
Okay. They actually established a date, and the date is August 10th of 2022, the date that it was signed into law.
Okay.
Veterans can get reimbursed. That is the effective date. It doesn't matter if they filed their claim in the 90s or whatnot, because they learned their lesson from adding to the list, right? That would this is already the most expensive bill to impact the VA in the years, so they kind of had to put a cap on it.
Okay.
They decided to cap. However, our surviving spouses, that date does not apply to them. So if we have a surviving spouse that is here and her husband died because his spouse passed away because of something related to hypertension, if that claim was previously, they could get a longer effective date.
Okay.
Okay.
That's good to know. Thank you for that elaboration. I had one question. This was a gentleman that was talking about, I already answered it in the chat to him directly. I just want to cover what his question was. And he was talking about 100% total and permanent and total service connected for the veteran. And if they pass away, does the dependent daughter no longer have benefits? And it kind of depends on their age. If they passed away because of a service-connected illness related to their service-connected and they're 100%, they can apply for DIC or dependent indemnity compensation. And then the dependent daughter up to, what is it, age 26? I believe it's 26, are eligible for compensation for that.
So I have a couple questions on my end, and one was asked about Little Creek as part of the Camp Lejeune Act. And I have been doing a lot of looking around here. Not Little Creek specifically. However, it does include the Marine Corps Air Station in New River, North Carolina, along with Camp Lejeune. Okay. However, like I said, if we can prove that Little Creek was a bad place and we can file that claim, the VA won't be able to easily dismiss that. And then we have a question from Carlton Weiskopf. I hope please forgive me, Carlton, if I said that wrong. Currently, what is the typical claim processing time as of today? So I just got information from the VA. They're saying that their average day to claim right now is 157 days. I would take that with a grain of salt. There's a lot of internal mechanisms they use to shorten that timeline. The real important thing is just making sure you file a substantially complete claim with as much evidence as possible, so it goes through the line as one time. Okay. But yes, it's about 157 days, which means there's taking a lot longer than that. Do we have any more questions here for me?
Not on my end.
No.
I think that's it.
I just want to appreciate everybody's time. It's a lot of information in a short period.
Yep.
Right. If you served over there, constantly constantly look at yourself. If you get something, remember, we're the only people in the United States that can have something bad happen to us in life, and we get to go back and say it's because of my service. Right. Work with your county veteran services officer or an accredited representative to assist you with your claim. And and get all the benefits you're entitled to. And once again, thank you for your service and thank you for your time.
Absolutely. And David, we want to thank you for your time. I know you got to run because you have another event you're attending right now, but we do appreciate you taking the time to provide this valuable information. And we want to thank all of you for joining us today. We want to thank Chaffey College and the Veteran Resource Center for allowing us to partner with them for this webinar. And speaking of webinars, we're going to give you a quick overview of some upcoming webinars. We do have some coming up tomorrow. We have a CalTAP one for discharge upgrades, as well as one through Samuel Merritt University on our CalVet Home Loans program. And my colleague Derek Rose will be hosting that, and I'll be backing up him tomorrow. And then next month in May, we have CalTAP for VA healthcare, and then some colleges for College of the Canyons, and then Samuel Merritt again. So there's some ongoing webinars through these universities and colleges, as well as our CalTAP 360s for these specific topics on healthcare coming up next month. Please reach out to our YouTube channel if you want any questions regarding previous webinars. You can access that through our CalTAP page. We have a ton. I know there's a bunch of recorded webinars. This one, in fact, will also be uploaded on there as soon as we get it vetted and completed, and we will upload it to our YouTube channel as well, so you can access it again for future reference. With that being said, we do want to take time again for the survey. We value your feedback. We continually improve our programs and meet the net benefits that you're looking for and the webinar. So take the time to fill this out, and we would definitely enjoy your feedback. Thank you all again for joining us today. We thank you for your service. Please stay well and stay healthy, and we hope to see you again on our upcoming webinars. Okay, thank you very much. There's also the CalTAP webinar, our email as well there. You can contact CalTAP at that website. Thank you again. Have a great day, everyone.